Welcome back. We are going to be talking about SSH tunneling in this video. So a lot of people are probably familiar with SSH and just using it to connect to another server or device, getting access to it to manage it. SSH is also extremely useful when you're interfacing with a Linux operating system, if you have it enabled to do local, remote, or some type of port forwarding. So in this scenario, I'm going to be setting up a dynamic port forward using the SSH-D and then specifying a port, so 8443, which will be bound on my local host. And then I'm going to connect to a Raspberry Pi I have set up here at my house. So I am now connected to this other Raspberry Pi that I have. And you'll see that on the wrong device. You'll see I now have this port bound 8443 on my local host on my VM. So what I can do now is configure a SOCKS proxy for my web browser. So I'm going to go back to Foxy Proxy. I'm going to specify SOCKS 4. Going to put in the port that I selected, so 8443. And now I can turn on the proxy. Now if I browse to my local host and go to /admin, this is displaying a Pi-hole server, which I do not actually have running on this VM. So it is actually, all the HTTP traffic is transiting the SOCKS proxy connection and is going to the Pi-hole that I have set up. So if we look here, still no port 80 open. But I'm successfully connected to that other server. So this is extremely helpful when you are able to get an SSH connection to a DMZ device or some device in a network and need to access other resources within that network. So if you needed to access like a management interface and you didn't want to custom build requests via like curl or something like that, this would allow you to see the web interface, see what's going on, interface with it, all with only an SSH connection into that environment. The other thing you can do is also configure proxy chains, which is another program. Basically, it allows you to take a program and point it, you prefix proxy chains onto a command, and it will actually tunnel that traffic through the proxy. But in order to do that, we need to configure proxy chains. Again, you can do man and then proxy chains and get some information on it. You'll see that there is an etc proxyfigs proxychains.config that we will be modifying. And something that I didn't mention earlier, but you need a sudo in order to do certain things. Think about it like on Windows where you have to run as admin. Same type of scenario. You basically just have to have elevated permissions to do stuff for security purposes. So I'm doing a sudo nano. That's a text editor. You can also use VI or any other of the text editors that are available for Linux. So I'm going to do that, putting in my password for my user and skipping down to the bottom. So I've already kind of set this up for myself, but here you would just remove that port and put in whatever port you established, so 8443 in my case. Control X to close out, to save, Y to save it, and then enter to overwrite the existing file name. So now if I do proxy chains and then I want to run my nmap, I would do an lowercase s, capital T. So this is going to do a full TCP connect, which is required when you're running proxy chains, because it doesn't Nmap doesn't function well if it's trying to do its normal scanning function. So we'll do a -st, and then we'll specify the IP of our localhost, and run it, and you'll see that there is a whole bunch of output that's coming across. That's actually all of the requests going through the proxy chains. It's a little noisy, but you can see that I was able to successfully run that Nmap scan against that remote device through the tunnel. You could also, instead of specifying that IP of that device, you could say, if it was in like a DMZ, you could then pivot to an internal IP address instead of having the IP address that you connected to from SSH. So hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.